All right, 4-2, day 2. Okay, we're going to first practice, given a graph, come up with an equation again. So we're doing 3 of these. So example 1, can you write the equation? Here's our first one.
Not do math year one day?
Nope.
I'm trying to help you. Push.
Oh, I need an end value here. This is going to finish at pi over 2. Okay, do you agree that this graph has some vertical shift to it? Because it's not right around the x-axis. So we know it's up in the air. So our equation is going to take on the form y equals, where do we see the vertical shift in the equation? It's at the beginning and it's added to the function. That was our c value. So it's c plus, and what's the other form of the equation? Not the other, but the form of the equation here that we have using the letters. A times either sine or cosine, and then b times the x. So you've got to figure out a, b, and c to get the equation here. Oh, I wrote sine in. Did you know that was a sine graph? Yeah. Okay, so you're okay with me putting sine in there? All right. C is our vertical shift, and it's equal to the axis value. This is our vertical shift, and it is the axis value. Well, because this is sine, where does sine start? On the axis. Sine always starts on the axis. So where is this that sine is starting? 3. Do you agree that that's 3? Halfway between 2 and 4? So the c value, here would be my dotted in axis that they're not showing us. So I kind of finished above the axis there. I'll put that there. So you've got to find the axis first, the vertical shift, and it's always going to be halfway between your max and min. Even if it's cosine, it's going to be halfway between the max and min. So your c value is right here, and it's 3. Where do I get my a from? And its amplitude, and where is it on the graph?
That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, he did. What did he mean when he put his fingers up like this? It's from this axis that we just found to the max, or the axis to the min, and what is that distance? 1. So I don't need the 1. Sine of, remember b is hidden. It's not visible on these numbers here. B is hidden inside of this period. How do we find the b? 2 pi over b has to come out equal to the pi over 2. So if we do cross products now and solve for b, pi times b equals 4 pi. B is a 4. So find your axis first, that's your C, then everything else kind of falls into place. Find the A, find the B. So start with the C. Try another.
So that's all we were trying to solve for?
Do the equation. Get the equation. All right, tell me what you know about this graph before we start digging into A, B, and C. What kind of function is it? Cosine. What else do you know about it?
It's negative cosine.
It's flipped over. Do you agree this is a cosine with a flip? So we'll go there. Cosine with a flip. All right. So it's y equals c plus a cosine b x. Actually, I could have put in a minus there, couldn't I? Minus. Why is it flipped? Because it's not a serial bowl. So you see the serial bowl is flipped over upside. Usually cosine's like a bowl.
Doesn't that become?
So I wanted a minus in there, not a plus, because of the flip. All right, we've got, you always want to find the axis first. And the axis is halfway between the min and the max. Always. Where's my min at? 0. Here's my min's down here at 0. My max is at 3. So what's the middle? 1.5. There's my C. So the C is 3/2 or 1.5 if you want. I don't care what kind of number. The book always uses the improper fractions.
Wait, why is that?
Because it's always halfway between max and min. The C is always, no matter if it's sine or cosine, C is always in the middle. So I needed the middle number for 0 and 3. So I just averaged 0 and 3. Add them up, divide by 2, you'll get C. Okay, what's my amplitude?
3.
Try again. It's from the axis to the max and the axis to the min. 1.5. There you go. Third time was the charm.
1.5 of 3.
Do you agree that's 1.5 there? So 3/2 if I want. So minus 3/2. I don't like the fact that those are the same, but can't change it now. Cosine. And now we've got to figure out the b, and the b is hidden in this period. So 2 pi over b equals pi. Divide by pi, I get a 2.
Can you scooch it all over?
Scooching.
Why is it pi over 1 on that one?
Because it's just equal to pi. And I wanted proportions so I could cross multiply and divide. One more? Yes?
Oh, shoot, I didn't get that.
Oh, come on.
Wait,
What are you
so
guys doing?
What is cosine? It just flips to negative in the formula thing?
No, it's a flipped over cosine, because cosine's normal graph looks like this. See why I call that a serial bowl? Do you see that?
Oh, okay.
And see how this is upside down? So I know it got flipped.
So it's only negative when mine was.
Only negative when it's flipped. Well, you missed the first day of this.
So you still have to put that though, right?
You still have to put what? In the equation, the negative has to be there, yes.
So what I'm saying, like the 3 over 2 minus 3 over 2.
Mm-hmm, because this has the vertical shift. This 3 over 2 is this dotted line. This 3 over 2 is this distance. So they're not referring to the same thing. It was a bad example on my part to make those two come out the same. Had I worked this out myself, I would have changed that, but I'll fix it for the next hour.
So no matter what, you have to have
Mm-hmm.
2 minus 2.
Yeah.
Not very often that those do match.
Wish you would put the numbers first.
Oh, I can. You can wait for me. So this is at -4, and this is going to be at 2. And then the ending is going to be at, oh, I didn't give an ending. Oh, let's see, I'll pick that fraction. I'll make it an ugly fraction, 3 pi over 4. Yeah, and these are supposed to be starting and ending at the same spots there, too. All right, tell me what kind of graph this is. Which function?
Negative.
It's a sine that's been flipped over. You agree with that? You recognize it? Sine with a flip. That's probably what you should start with. And then go into y equals c minus a this time because it's got a flip, sine bx. Okay, where do I get c from? Average the max and the min. Maybe we ought to tell ourselves that. C is the average of max and min. So what is the average of -4 and 2?
-1.
-1. So this axis is at -1. So the C is a -1 minus, what's my amplitude? Yep, this distance from the axis to the max or the axis to the min, that's a distance of 3. Sine, and then we got to find the b. And that's just that little formula, 2 pi over b has to equal 3 pi over 4. It is really 1:45 already?
Holy cow.
Why is we having fun?
What? What happened? I got 8/3.
What does B equal? 8/3?
8/3. Are you good with that? So start with the vertical shift, visibly see the A, and then figure out the B.
Why is
How much more do we have?
Why is what?
8, 3?
Because it's the distance from -1 to 4, or it's the distance from -1 to 2,
So from your axis.
to your max. It's the definition of amplitude. Okay, we have our last physical change to these graphs. So it's our last explore. We are not going to put vertical shift in today's graphs. We're going to throw that away for our day.
Thank God.
So we're going to go with A sine B, and then we're going to add and subtract a number from the angle. X minus D. Well, A, B, C, D is our last one. C is always going to be our vertical shift. So we're not doing vertical shift. So, what's left to do?
Real question.
So we've got sine X. We're going to go sine of X minus pi over 4.
Can't we just do like an easy one, like 3?
Nope, because the angle is usually in terms of pi, so it's better to do a form of pi. Well, I'm just using it for the Explorer, because we're so familiar with it, then we can see what changes. You can go ahead and graph it if you're ready. See if you can tell what happened.
Just made the period longer.
Nope. It didn't change the period.
Wouldn't have been on mine.
Graph. There's sine. And then here's my new one. This one's hard to pick up, but if I was to cover up, if I go, see how sine started on the axis there? We know sine starts on the axis. What's happening is, the sine is actually starting right there. See how it's starting on the axis and then doing its thing, and it didn't quite complete because I don't have a big enough window here. So what it actually did was it took that sine graph and pulled it to the right. Do you see it? This point right here at the origin is now right here. You see, it took it and it shifted it to the right.
Okay,
Yeah,
Do you know what shift to the right means?
yeah,
Why did that explain?
it translated it.
It translated it to the right.
But why?
Because we subtracted that pi over 4, this is actually at pi over 4.
I don't like that right there.
That's like the second cycle we would see going to the left. That's it going to the left. That's why I tried to cover it up.
Just ignore it.
Yep, just ignore it. So if I wanted to see it finished, it would be pi over 4 more past this one. So what this does, when I subtracted pi over 4, it shifted it to the right.
Wait, those are possible to have a axis shift on this? Because that would be really,
Like, what do you mean an axis shift?
like a C.
Yeah, we just did that. See, we did the up and down Wednesday. We remember dotted in the new axis. It was no longer the x-axis. So, I don't want to do a whole lot of those because they don't show up very well. They're kind of hard to see a little bit. So just know that this D is called phase shift. And it shifts to the left and to the right. If I have an x minus d, that will shift to the right d units. So what do you think an x plus d is going to do? It will shift it to the left. D units. So it's kind of the opposite of what you would think. A minus is pulling it to the right, a plus is pulling it to the left. So our x values are what are going to get messed up today. Where did every x value start? Every table started with what x value? For 4 days now. Well, it was 0. Now we're going to pull that off of the origin, so we're not going to be starting at 0. All right, so let's see. Y equals, oh, it's my first table. Let's go 3 cosine 2 x minus pi over 4. Pick out our characteristics, I guess you would call them, like amplitude, period, vertical shift, which we're not having any today, and now phase shift.
Amplitude is a 3.
Amplitude is a 3. Period,
Oh, we have to type that in.
no you don't. Where is the b hidden in this equation? Not really hidden. Where's the b in this equation?
Well, it's 2.
It's 2. The b is in front of the parentheses. So to figure out the period, I always do 2 pi divided by b. My b is sitting right here as a 2.
Oh, it's a pi.
So 2 pi
Gracious.
gives me pi. Do I have vertical shift here?
No. No.
None. 0. Phase shift?
You still put vertical shift 0?
I'm going to just for the notes. Do we have any phase shift?
Yes.
How much?
I don't know if you would say
To the right
x
pi over
minus.
4.
Nope. You would say right pi over 4 or just say pi over 4. Positive pi over 4 means, no, let's say right pi over 4. Let's actually give the direction.
This is going to be confusing.
Where did you get the 2 pi over 2?
2 pi divided by my b. There's a 2 sitting in the b spot.
So put it blunt.
B is always in front of the x. Okay?
Well, why, Is it just assumed that it's 2 pi?
Always 2 pi, yep.
Yeah.
That's the normal.
Oh, no, man.
Okay. All right. So, let's make the graph first, then we'll come back and, well, let me start the table here, but actually, no, we're going to start the table.
All right.
Okay.
We got cosine.
We've got cosine, but I want x's first.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Okay, so
X's
0.
first, not 0. Why is it not 0?
Oh.
Right. Remember this right here. This 0 got pulled over, so it's not starting on the origin anymore. It's starting at this phase shift. So your first x value from now on, and it always was, the phase shift. But we just never had any phase shift, so it was 0. So we are starting at pi over 4. I need the distance from this to this, the distance, to equal a full period length. What's the period? 1 pi. 1 pi. So if I'm at a quarter, where am I going to finish at? Or what's my process to see where I'm going to finish if I need to go 1 full pi down the line?
5 pi over 4.
And what did you do to get that?
Well, divide that by 1 pi. 4 over 4, I don't know.
Well, the process is your phase starting number, add on a period length. So phase plus period. So I'm going to do it off to the side here. My phase was pi over 4. The period is pi over 1. Get a common denominator by hitting it with a 1. That's going to turn into 4 over 4. So what do you get when you add 1 pi plus 4 pi? 5 pi over 4. So that's the hardest part, is remembering that the x values start at the phase, and then it's phase plus period to see where it ends. Now it's this process, average to get the middle. So I'm going to add 1/4 plus 5/4 and divide by 2. What's 1/4 plus 5/4? 6/4. Dividing by 2 is multiplying by a half. What are we going to get?
6 to 8, so it's
3/4. Now I'm going to average these two to get this one. So that's 1/4 plus 3/4 divided by 2. And what will that turn out to be?
That would be 2.
Yep. 1/4 plus 3/4 is 1. Divided by 2 is pi over 2. And then I'm going to average these two. 3/4 plus 5/4. Divide by 2. 8/4. What's 8/4? That's 2. That's 2. Divide by 2 is 1 pi. X has just got a whole lot more challenging today.
Yeah.
There's a lot more work. Okay, so
Could you move it up a little bit?
yep.
Are we only graphing one side?
Yeah, we'll just do one side today. We'll do one table today and one sketch. All right, so we're starting at pi over 4, and it looks like I'm pi over 4, so everything's evenly spaced here. So my amount over, and then pi over 4 to 1/2, that's a quarter also. So I know that these are, whatever I've established this as, I need 5 of them. This will be 5 pi over 4. Okay, we have no vertical shift, so my axis is right here on the x-axis. Where does cosine start? What's its pattern? Max, ax, min-ax, max. Okay, so I'm going to start above the axis. How far above the axis am I going to go? 3 above. So it's going to start right here at 3. It's going to hit the axis at 0. Where's my min going to be at? -3. 0. 3.
Oh, okay, so because we have no vertical shift, the axis is...
Yes, the axis isn't changing. There will be no vertical shift today.
No vertical shift.
We will wrap our brain around phase shift. Here, I gotta do one more. We don't have time.
Wait, so on the homework, do you only want us to do one side of the graph?
Yep. We're just going to do one today. We'll save it on Monday when we don't have as much to go over. We'll do 2. Okay, last one. There's one other thing that can make this complicated.
Is this going to be like long?
Nope, no longer than the other one. Well, one step longer. See, but I just did cosine. I'm going to switch this to sine. Okay, one thing is different about this equation than the one we just did, and it's the position of the b. See how the b was outside of the parentheses here?
Yeah.
And that's where it should be before you get started. The b needs to be outside the parentheses. This one, the b got multiplied in here, it's inside parentheses. So before we even pick out anything, we need to get that 3 back out in front.
Just cross it out.
No crossing it out. Okay, when I take this out, what operation do I do to get it in the parentheses?
Multiply.
We multiply to get it in. I have to divide to get it back out. So when I take it out, I put down the 3, but to see what's left behind, you divide by 3 and you divide by 3. So this turns into x plus pi over 3. So you divide the b out. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, now we start picking out the 4 things.
No.
Yes, you're not, what?
Never mind.
Okay, amplitude, what is it? 2 with a flip. Period
3.
is 2 pi divided by
Nice.
3. She was just a little early on her answer. Vertical shift is
0.
0. So our axis values are all going to be 0. Phase.
Pi over 3. Okay, that's
Going
what I
to
don't
the
find.
left side.
What?
The axis. Oh, I thought the phase was the axis.
Nope, the vertical shift is where my horizontal axis is at. The phase is where the where it starts on the x-axis. No, phase. So this is going left pi over 3. What? Because it's plus. I wrote that down up at the top. Minus goes to the right, plus goes to the left. Okay, starting x value is no longer at the origin. Where is it? If it starts left pi over 3 from the origin, where am I going to be at? Negative pi over 3. Like I told you, this is your phase. The ending value is phase plus period. So off to the side, I'm going to take negative pi over 3 and add 2 pi over 3.
Wouldn't it have to be negative 2 pi over 3 too?
Nope, I'm just adding on that distance. Period is a distance. Well, a distance in radians. So what's negative pi over 3 plus 2 pi over 3?
Negative or pi over 3.
Positive pi over 3? You okay with that? Forget the pi, think negative 1/3 plus 2/3 and then stick a pi on the answer. So it's going to finish at pi over 3. So what does that put in the middle?
0.
0. What's the middle of negative 1/3 and 0? Add, divide by 2. Negative pi over 6. Pi over 6. So, my x's, I've got 2 to the left, 0, and 2 to the right, so I've got this. This is my negative pi over 3. This is my pi over 3. Can you figure out the y's while I look and change the assignment? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that.
All right, I have a few announcements from the sports world. I talked to you a little bit about Lexi Hungesto, her first team volleyball. We do also have second team and some honorable mention. Emily Dykowski was second team volleyball, and Kelsey Fournier and Jenna Steinhoff were honorable mention for the GNC. Congratulations, ladies. Also, girls basketball tryouts are going to be on Monday. They're going to be at 5 o'clock in the high school gym, and that will be for all JV and varsity girls basketball.
Is it Act Max or Act Min? I forgot.
Well, because it's flipped, it's going to go to the men.
Girls basketball tryouts for JV and varsity will be Monday at 5 o'clock.
And then how'd you get the negative 2 and a 2 real quick?
Amplitude was 2, so I'm going 2 below and 2 above,
Okay.
above that axis.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Okay, you've got 3 with 1 table, 1 sketch, and then a worksheet of write the equation for the graph.